What is going to fill up the space in your life that was previously occupied by this app if TikTok does go away on the 19th? I was having this conversation with my two eldest kids who also use TikTok, and I was saying like, okay, it's not just the time that we spend scrolling and watching videos. For me, it's the amount of time that I also spend thinking about the things that y'all have to say, really thought-provoking or encouraging content, as well as the exasperating and anger-inducing content. I've only been using this app for about 10 months, and the time that I spend on TikTok is time that I previously spent taking care of my elderly father, which was a difficult but also incredibly mundane and grief-filled experience. And so I found that TikTok taking up that time was a real benefit in my life, not only in the ways that I was able to learn from other people and connect with other people, also that it took up the space of something that was a really difficult, burdensome part of my life for quite a while. If you've never been the caregiver for a difficult parent or a parent with dementia, don't at me about me saying that time was burdensome. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. So I know I, for one, will go back to using less social media than I did before. I will continue to post on YouTube. I have gotten Blue Sky. Those don't have the same kind of instantaneous connection. And honestly, I don't spend nearly as much time watching YouTube videos. Or I watch like Folding Ideas and H Bomber Guy video essays with my kids. And there are those history-bounding, sewing, knitting, spinning creators that I watch regularly on YouTube. But I no longer watch the news on YouTube. I have cut back on a number of channels that I used to follow as they have all slid to the right significantly or now feel more comfortable being overtly alt-right. So what are you going to occupy your time with, your mental space with? Because I've been thinking about what that's going to look like for me. I think it would be a good thing. It's a mixed bag, right? Like there will be a loss of the connection of the content. We all know that this app is not purely positive. It is a time suck. It does shorten our attention spans. There is a lot of bullying on this app. There's a lot of rage bait. There's a lot of pointless, petty bickering, especially if you are on left-leaning TikTok, that sometimes we can get really drawn into, bogged down in, and it takes something bigger and devastating and more meaningful to help us gain some perspective and realize how a lot of the like tiny minutia that we bicker about is really absolutely meaningless, or people outside of this sphere give zero fucks about it. I've said before, it reminds me of when I used to be a Presbyterian and how in kind of like intellectual Christian circles, people will argue about the most tiny minutia of doctrine. Parsing out those tiny details, arguing about them was more important than anything else. In fact, I remember a conversation where a very influential family left our church, and she said, these are issues of life and death. They're more than that. They're issues of eternal life and eternal death. And like, meanwhile, homeless people were lined up outside of our church downtown, hungry, unhoused. There were no beds in shelters for them, no beds in treatment for them. And our congregants were arguing about little issues of doctrine, rather than spending our energy out in the real world caring for the most vulnerable folks in Portland. TikTok sometimes reminds me of that dynamic. And I wonder if this app going away will give people more time, more capacity, free up space for them to be out in the world doing good, rather than arguing about things that in the grand scheme of people's lives, in terms of meeting emergent needs, those things like don't really matter. They just feel very big in this artificial space. And along those lines, one of my kids is taking an indigenous history class, and he had a really good thought exercise that his teacher laid out for him. I wanted to share it because I think it's really applicable when we're thinking about what we're going to be doing if this app goes away. How this app has shaped our brains, how we spend our time, how we think, where our focus is. So the prompt went something like this. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing. I don't have it in front of me. What is the main thing that you spend most of your time on, give most of your energy and focus to? Your schoolwork? Is it sports? Is it gaming? Is it social media? Think back 200, 500, 1,000 years. Envision yourself as an indigenous person who probably doesn't wander more than a few miles from home. You don't have all of those modern things to occupy your brain space. Instead, your curiosity, your voracity for acquiring knowledge and understanding is focused on those few miles around your home. You have the time and the ability to become intimately connected with the land in which you live. You know every blade of grass, every rolling hill. You know the songs of every bird. You can identify all of the edible, medicinal, and useful plants. You understand the change of the seasons, the way the stars move through the sky. While you don't have access to the global worldview of modern people and all of that information coming in from all over the world, from a huge diversity of sources and perspectives. Instead, you have this much smaller universe, the same innate desire, the same hunger and thirst for knowledge. And so even though geographically the space is smaller, you have the ability, the capacity, the time to absorb every tiny detail, to be an observer who can zero in, who can hone in on every tiny connection. Layers of complexity you never would have absorbed if you were distracted with things outside of your sphere. You have the time to meditate on those connections, memorize those details, to build a fascinatingly, intricately connected web, a map of the world around you, and to put down deep roots so that not only your body, but your mind, your psyche are connected to the land. Because the way that you live life back to 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, are still entirely human with the same drives. Your world looks so different. The way you spend your days looks so different. And then the prompt was saying, now imagine if you had 20 or 50 generations of a community, of a culture that was connected to the land in that way, had the time and the ability to be connected to each other, to the culture in that way. What a different lived experience that must have been for Indigenous Americans. I read that prompt out to all my kids, and we have talked about it. We've been thinking about it a lot. While there are so many things about this app that I cherish, about modern life that I cherish and are valuable to me, what have we lost? And what could we possibly regain a little bit? What are some of the unanticipated benefits? These current issues on social media and us pulling back from using apps that are controlled by unsavory men with horrible agendas, like Twitter, like Instagram, like Facebook. If that is compounded with us losing this app, what capacity does that free up for a different lived experience? Whether it be learning to connect with our immediate community, spending more time out and about, caring for our neighbors, caring for the most vulnerable who live right outside our door, or whether it also includes connecting with our microregion, with the natural world around us in a way we've never been able to before. I might have spent ruminating about a video I saw. Could I be spending that time contemplating the connections all around me in nature, between species and the land, between seasons and wildlife, how all of those things connect to me, connect to the place that I love and call home? I don't know. I just, I'm always forever an optimist. I'm try to be realistic, but I'm always forever an optimist. And I'm always looking for how the problem can be the solution, as we say in permaculture. What are the unexpected benefits? If something looks like it is a negative, in what ways can it actually bring a benefit to our lives? How can it be a purpose for which we can find a good use? And I think about the time and bandwidth, the mental space that might be freed up here real soon if this app goes away, and how there will be grief and there will be the loss of connection, the loss of information that comes if TikTok goes away. But what opportunities does that open up for us to form new, better, more functional channels of communication, to form a different kind of community connection, to exchange ideas in different ways? Maybe that will increase our quality of life, and maybe that will make our pursuit of just causes more effective. I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. What are you going to do if TikTok goes away? If you stop using other social media platforms as they move farther and farther away from your values? What are you going to lean into that is in alignment with your values? What is that going to look like?